Ark has been reincarnated into his favorite fantasy universe, a concept that might sound thrilling. Yet, his reality is far from glamorous. He exists as a minor background character, serving as a personal butler to Eleanor, the girl destined to become the story's main villain, and she harbors an intense obsession with him. As her tragic fate nears, Ark faces a stark question. Will he manage to alter the course of events to save her, or will he merely be dragged down alongside her into darkness? This world is not merely any fantasy realm, but the setting of Japan's well-known game Celestia Kingdom, renowned for its multiple endings and its notorious villainess, Yandere. Yet, Ark is neither hero nor rival. He isn't even mentioned in the game's narrative. He often describes himself simply as a background character, with no memories of his previous life in Japan beyond his origin. Unlike typical reincarnation stories, he was not blessed with magic, prestige, or any grand destiny. He was an ordinary orphan living an uneventful life. However, Ark's story deviates from the norm. He refuses to accept weakness and begins training with a sword during his free time, initially just for fun. His skill quickly surprises everyone when he defeats the village elders in sparring matches. One day, the local orphanage director approaches him, visibly impressed. "Excellent work, Ark," he says. "With your talent, you could become a great knight." Ark dismisses the compliment, pointing out that commoners can't become knights. The director counters softly, "Strength and wisdom are what truly define a knight, regardless of birth." Then, with a mysterious tone, he asks Ark for a favor. Suddenly, the scene shifts. Ark finds himself inside an opulent castle, nervously seated on a luxurious sofa. "Aren't we out of place here?" he whispers to the director. The director only smiles knowingly. "There's someone here to meet you," he says. The heavy doors swing open, revealing a distinguished nobleman. "I am Adalbert and Senes, Count of this region," the man announces. Ark gulps in disbelief, unable to believe the presence of a high-ranking noble. The Count turns to the director. "So, this is the boy you mentioned," he notes. After a nod of confirmation, the Count looks directly at Arkansas. "I've heard you are quite capable," he says. "I'd like to ask for your help in a matter." Ark's surprise deepens when the Count's next words leave him stunned. "Would you be willing to form a friendship with my daughter?" His confusion only grows as the doors reopen. "Yandere, come in," the Count commands. The young girl enters quietly and bows politely. "It's a pleasure to meet you," she says gently. Ark's heart beats faster at seeing her. "So, this is her," he thinks. The Count smiles warmly. "Both of you should go for a walk in the garden," he suggests. Obediently, they step outside. The garden is breathtaking, filled with vibrant flowers and lush greenery. Attempting to break the awkward silence, Ark comments softly, "The Count was right. This garden is truly beautiful." Yandere nods silently, showing little emotion. The meticulous care by the gardeners is evident. As they walk, Ark quietly observes her. She is his age, and despite her cold demeanor, her striking beauty causes his pulse to quicken. The girl was as adorable and stunning as her role demanded, a gentle blush touching her cheeks. Suddenly, she halted, causing Ark to tilt his head in curiosity. "Is something wrong?" he asked softly. Yandere cut him off, her voice trembling with quiet resignation. "If you're not feeling well, we can go back," he suggested. She shook her head slowly, her gaze cast downward. "I knew it. You don't really want to be my friend, do you?" she murmured. Her voice faltered as she continued, "I get it. No one wants to befriend the cursed girl. I've grown used to it." She paused, her hand reaching out to a nearby flower. With a delicate touch, the vibrant blossom instantly shriveled into dust. "See? That's my curse," she explained softly. "Everything I touch withers and dies. Do you see why they call me the cursed child? Would you really want someone like me as a friend?" Ark stared, stunned by her words. His heart clenched with empathy. He had never realized how much she had endured. In the game, Yandere was portrayed as a villainess. Yet at this moment, she appeared as a lonely girl burdened by an unwanted, destructive power. Could her suffering be the reason for his reincarnation? To alter her destiny? To grant her happiness? Stepping closer, Ark spoke with conviction. Elir-sama, I don't think your power is anything to be afraid of. I don't feel scared at all. He smiled gently, continuing, in fact, I find you truly beautiful. Her eyes widened in surprise, her cheeks flushing crimson. Ark's warm smile brightened his face. Even if you believe your power only brings pain, he said softly, I want to help change that. With a tender gesture, he raised his hand and whispered gently, Bloom. A faint, calming light enveloped her hand, where once life seemed to vanish. Ark's touch summoned unnoticed energy, and the withered flower gradually reawakened, blooming anew. He looked into her eyes, sincere. Elir, will you accept this? Will you be my friend? Later, she lay asleep, haunted by troubling dreams. Echoes of cruel words calling her the cursed girl haunted her mind, cold voices echoing with disdain. Suddenly, she saw her mother, eyes filled with fear. Don't look at me with those eyes, her mother whispered. Tears streamed down Elir's face as she wished she had never been born. Without warning, she awoke, tears still blurring her vision. Ark, concerned, softly called her name. Are you okay? It looked like you had a nightmare, he asked gently. Though shaken, Elir tried to dismiss her distress, but Ark noticed her tears and grew worried. Without hesitation, he held her close in a comforting embrace, offering reassurance and safety. In that moment, Elir felt her lonely heart begin to open. Perhaps, for the first time, she remembered what it was like to have a friend. Later, Ark asked again if she would be his friend, and she hesitated, afraid her curse might only bring him sorrow. Ark reassured her with unwavering conviction. My wish is the opposite. I want to stay by your side, no matter what. When she worried about causing him pain, he gently replied, No one can go through life without hurting others sometimes. But being together, despite everything, is worth it. She insisted she might be happier with someone else. But Ark gently took her hands and said, Elir, you are the only one I want. Only you, she whispered, a note of genuine surprise in her voice. Moved by her words, Elir hesitated but then nodded softly. Then let's get along. Please take care of me. Without further hesitation, they agreed to walk this new path together. Back in the present moment, Elir sheepishly asks for forgiveness, admitting she needs some help. Ark responds with gentle reassurance, telling her not to apologize, for his heart has always been open to her. Elir, with a warm smile, admits she's never had anyone she could truly call a friend or ally before. Ark comforts her, saying friendship adopts many forms. The key, he explains, is honest communication and patience. Life is a long journey, and they will face its challenges side by side. Their shared smile reflects a renewed sense of hope and connection. Over the ensuing weeks, Elir undergoes a noticeable transformation. Ark watches with admiration as her spirit brightens and her charm becomes even more undeniable. One day, during their conversation, he notices her observing him, lost in thought. She pouts playfully, teasing him about whether anything is more important than her questions. Ark, with a loving smile, admits that nothing surpasses her in significance. Her delighted, mesmerized expression reveals how deeply she values their bond. Inside, Ark thinks to himself with a hint of pride, Believe it or not, I'm quite handsome. Elir, in turn, rolls her eyes and then inquires about Ark's taste in clothing. Before he can respond, the Count calls him away on official duties. Elir makes a face, teasing, Go on then, since you're so absent-minded today. As Ark departs, he leans in slightly and whispers, Whatever you wear, you'll always look wonderful to me. Her cheeks flush in response as he goes. The Count formally welcomes Ark into the enemy's household, making him part of their family. Grateful, Ark expresses his happiness and adds, There's one thing I'd like to do. Casting a glance at Elir, he notices her fuming and impatient. Outside, she grumbles about his tardiness, questioning whether conversations with her father were more engaging than worrying alone. With a mischievous grin, Ark apologizes. "Forgive me, my lady," he says, bowing fully dressed in his butler's uniform. Ark Leaffort, reporting for duty. "From today, I will serve you as your attendant." The story then jumps ahead by 3 years. Ark is busily preparing for a grand celebration, while Elier has just turned 10, a significant milestone in their world. Although Ark is only 10 himself, he's remarkably capable and oversees all the arrangements. A maid approaches, announcing that everything is ready. Ark responds with a slightly exhausted but satisfied nod. She notes his fatigue but appreciates his effort, reminding him that everything will be perfect by the following day. Ark reflects on how the head butler appointed him captain of the preparations simply because he used common sense. The maid is impressed by his ideas and his ability to execute them smoothly. However, Ark's main motivation remains clear. It's all for Elier-sama. He recalls her words and feels a deep desire to make this first celebration truly special for her. Any effort, any hardship, seemed worthwhile for her happiness. Telling the maid he's going to train, Ark is surprised when she protests, pointing out his tired state. Smiling, he utilizes a bit of healing magic to reassure her he will be fine. After some rigorous training, Ark notices Eller standing alone nearby. He walks over and asks gently, "How long have you been there?" She answers casually, "A little while now." Ark, concerned, softly scolds her. Yet she teases him, saying, "It's cold outside, but if I catch a cold, you'll keep me warm, right?" Ark is taken aback by her straightforwardness, realizing how much she has been through lately. "My visits are infrequent, yet as my servant you should always stay close." Ark offers an apology, explaining it's all part of preparing for her grand birthday tomorrow. Elier blushes and relents, accepting the reasoning. If that's the case, then it's understandable. She then queries, "Do you ever feel lonely?" Ark shakes his head. Everyone in the household makes an effort to ensure he feels included. A shadow crosses Elier's face as her mood dims. She softly says, "See you tomorrow," and departs, leaving Ark to ponder what he might have said wrong. The next day, the celebration begins. The Count discreetly signals Ark to keep watch for any disturbances. Ark's gaze sweeps over the crowd, settling on a pair of twins he finds suspicious. However, before he can investigate further, they melt into the throng. Moments later, Elier makes a breathtaking entrance, captivating all in attendance with her elegance. Ark admires her from afar, a pang of regret striking him for not standing beside her now. Suddenly, a maid beckons Ark away. The scene shifts unexpectedly to a surprise. Elori has brought him to sit beside her at the main event. Ark is puzzled. "Why did you bring me here?" he asks. Elori gently responds, "You're not just my attendant, and you should be celebrated too. You're 10 now as well." Ark is stunned. He has never celebrated his birthday because he doesn't even know when it is. Yet Elori thoughtfully considered him, giving him equal honor. He marvels at the kindness she shows, questioning how someone so caring could be seen as a villain. He offers her a smile. "It's an honor to share this birthday with you." Elier blushes deeply in return. Ark remains alert, eyes scanning the room with resolve to protect Elori from any threat. His mind drifts back to the suspicious twins who vanished. One thing is clear. As long as he is with her, he will shield her from any darkness the future may bring. The ballroom of the Aninis estate shone under 1,000 candles. A sea of silk mingled with whispered political schemes. For Ark Leaffort, standing rigid beside his charge, Countess Eleanor Ancinus, the night felt less like a celebration and more like an exhibition. The scrutinizing gazes of the nobility prickled across his skin, studying him like a rare artifact. He kept his posture strict, focused solely on duty. Then, a sudden shift in atmosphere occurred. A ripple of artificial brilliance announced the approach of a young boy who moved as if the light itself bent to his will. He was blond, impeccably dressed, and emanated an arrogance so palpable it almost shimmered. Without greeting Ark, he extended his hand to Eleanor. His voice carried the commanding tone of a crown prince demanding homage, requesting that she dance with him. Ark's eyes narrowed. A faint digital overlay flickered above the boy's head. The familiar interface from a game world Ark knew well. Recognition clicked in his mind. This was Razor Kilman, the son of a viscount. But he was much younger than the character Ark's remembered from the game's storyline. The timeline had shifted. This was Razor before his notorious rise, before he gained infamy as a spoiled brat with a foul mouth and a penchant for violence. Many traits once considered minor were ironically overshadowed by his later reputation as a devoted fan-favorite protagonist. In reality, in person, he was considerably less charming. Razor finally caught Ark's gaze, and his expression hardened into a sneer. With an indifferent wave, he dismissed the servant, commanding him to go away. Turning back to Elalaner, he was puzzled that she hadn't immediately fallen into his arms. After all, he was a prize from the Celestia Kingdom, and her obedience should have been automatic. Eleanor watched him with cool, detached bewilderment, asking if he truly intended to dance with her. When he confirmed with arrogant impatience, her response was swift and decisive. She refused. The rejection struck Razor like a physical blow, breaking his composure entirely. He stammered, demanding to know why she would dare refuse him. Eleanor simply turned away, delivering the final blow. Her refusal made it clear she had no desire to dance with him. Humiliation ignited a volatile rage within him, and the charming suitor was replaced by a furious, violent brat. With a loud snarl, he lunged forward, attempting to grab her sleeve. Yet before his fingers could close around her, another hand swiftly intercepted his wrist. Ark's leaf fort had acted. Startled by the sudden resistance, Razor gasped. "Know your place, servant," he shrieked. Ark's remained unmoved, his expression as cold and unyielding as steel. He identified himself not merely as a servant but as Eleanor's sworn attendant, whose primary duty was to protect her at all costs. Determined to fulfill that obligation, he expertly twisted Razor's arm behind his back, subduing him. The boy flailed helplessly, crying out in pain and frustration. Ark's voice lowered into a warning tone. He advised Razor to calm down, explaining that harming a daughter of a higher-ranking noble or her servant would cause serious political repercussions for the Kilman family. The boy's tantrum faltered as the reality of their social hierarchy dawned on him. He was ignorant of true power, but he understood it. Reluctantly, Razor ceased resisting, grumbling as he submitted. Sensing the de-escalation, Ark's released him, exhaling a measured breath of relief. Yet, as soon as he relaxed, Razor's eyes flashed with malice. A wicked smirk curled on his lips as he spun around and threw a cowardly punch, a desperate act born of frustration. Ark's, experienced in far more dangerous worlds than the ballroom, anticipated the betrayal. With seamless ease, he sidestepped the clumsy strike and delivered a precise chop to the back of Razor's neck. The blow was dull but conclusive, and Razor's eyes rolled back as he collapsed forward. Ark's caught the unconscious boy before he hit the ground. A maid named Nye rushed forward, visibly shaken and terrified. Calmly, Ark's handed Razor over to her and instructed her to summon his older brother and father immediately. As she hurried away, a frantic voice called his name, signaling the next turn in this tense confrontation. Eleanor stood beside him, her eyes reflecting a mix of concern and silent worry. Not for herself, but for his well-being. Her gaze fixed on the faintly swollen, red mark where he had blocked Razor's strike. It was a minor bruise, yet to Ark's, it represented the toll of the violence he had endured on her behalf. He attempted to downplay it, brushing it off and insisting he was unharmed. Still, Eleanor saw it as a symbol of his sacrifice and the danger he had faced. He offered her a gentle smile, assuring her that the swelling was insignificant compared to her safety. Later, in a secluded parlor, the atmosphere shifted from the tension of the ballroom to one heavy with formal regret. On the floor, a young man executed a flawless digessa, bowing his head to the carpet. This was Caesar Kilman, Razor's elder brother. His demeanor embodied the ideal noble, kind, soft-spoken, and earnest. His voice trembled with sincerity as he repeatedly apologized for his brother's disgraceful actions. Arx, conscious of the awkwardness of seeing a noble kneeling before a servant, urged Caesar to rise. The young man did so, his face weary yet resolute. He admitted that Razor's arrogance stemmed from being spoiled, living under the delusion that he was entitled to everything he desired. Arx listened intently, noting that Razor was showcasing behavior typical of a spoiled child, an immature impulse ruling his actions. Caesar explained the true trigger behind the incident. He had merely advised Razor to approach any girl who piqued his interest. A simple, innocuous suggestion, yet Razor had misinterpreted it as a license to harass a countess. The fallout had brought the peril of exile into view, a serious, weighty consequence that cast a pall over the room. The word echoed ominously, emphasizing the gravity of the situation. For a fleeting second, Arx's composure faltered. The idea of exile, a common theme in fantasy stories, excited his inner enthusiast. He had to quickly hide a grin, pressing his hand to his mouth to mask his amusement, and swiftly composed a sober expression. He mused inwardly that, in this world, a child of 10 was considered old enough to face adult repercussions. As the discussion drew to a close, Arx contemplated the implications. The path of Razor Killman, the Viscount's son, once rooted in the original game storyline, had now been shattered. The plot was diverting away from its predetermined course. If the game's unchangeable narrative could be altered for Razor, perhaps Eleanor's tragic fate could also be rewritten. Hope surged within him. He then found Eleanor waiting on a moonlit balcony, her figure illuminated by the soft glow. She turned as he entered, her voice tentative, asking if everything had been sorted out. Arx nodded, reassuring her that the matter was concluded and that witnesses would safeguard her reputation. But Eleanor's mind was elsewhere, her face shadowed with guilt. She apologized, her voice trembling, blaming herself entirely. She called Razor a bandit, lamenting how her birthday celebration had been spoiled. Moving closer, Arx closed the distance between them. He saw the burden of guilt weighing heavily upon her shoulders. Gently, he reached out, cupping her face with his hands and tilting her chin upward so she met his gaze. In a soft, earnest voice, she shared her deepest feelings. She confided that as long as Arx was with her, she cared little for the expectations of others, the nobles, the politics, or the social game. His presence was all that mattered. Arx's face broke into a tender, genuine smile as he looked at her, breaking the tense heaviness of the ruined celebration. He asked if she wanted to step outside for a moment, to slip away unnoticed. He suggested that it was still early enough to avoid declaring the evening lost. A faint blush crept into Eleanor's cheeks as she nodded. Standing on the stone terrace beneath the dark, obsidian sky, Arx leaned slightly forward. Amidst the quiet waning of the festivities, he inquired whether she had managed to dance with anyone. Eleanor hesitated, turning her gaze away. With a serious expression, she confided that she had not danced even once that night, having actively declined every offer. In their society, such refusal was a breach of etiquette bordering on scandal, for dance was a vital part of noble connections. Suddenly, a warm blush returned to her cheeks as she revealed her true feelings. She confessed that her earlier hesitation stemmed from a lack of courage, but her heart's desire was clear. She wanted her first dance to be with Arkansas. She admitted she had planned to ask him the day before, but fear held her back. Arx's gaze sharpened as understanding dawned. This was the reason for her strange behavior. She revealed she'd never danced before, her insecurity laid bare. With calmness and reassurance, Arx assured her that even if she stumbled, he would be the only witness. He highlighted their privacy, noting that not even the moon was watching. A gentle smile appeared on his face as he spoke. With elegant courtesy, he extended his hand, bowing slightly to ask for the privilege of her dance. Eleanor's eyes sparkled as she took his hand. The garden around them seemed to dissolve into a private ballroom. Suddenly, the scene shifted, recounting the earlier chaos in the banquet hall. Arx had been surrounded by a swarm of eager nobles, each vying for his attention. One offered any price he desired. Another insisted he become a servant in their household. Overwhelmed, Ark raised his hands to calm the crowd, begging for silence. They praised his stand against the Kilman heir and his magical prowess. But Arkex, with quiet dignity, refused politely yet firmly. He apologized, expressing steadfast loyalty. With a bright, unwavering smile, he declared himself Elon Sama's loyal servant. Eleanor watched this scene unfold, her face lighting with relief and joy. Now, as the hall emptied, Ark slumped against a wall, utterly exhausted. His pristine uniform concealed a tired boy who hoped for rest. Yet, the celebration had required preparation and cleanup, and sweat beaded on his forehead as he lamented his workload. Just as despair threatened to overwhelm him, a rhythmic knocking echoed softly through the hall. Nye suddenly appeared, beaming, to announce that the entire venue had already been cleaned. Ark was momentarily stunned. Nye explained that inspired by Arkex's dedication, the staff had worked even harder and more quickly than expected. Ark blushed, embarrassed by the sudden praise, and managed a tired smile that reflected both exhaustion and quiet satisfaction. It was clear from his expression that he appreciated the moment, and he observed that Eleanor seemed to have enjoyed herself. En's face softened as she watched Arkansas reflecting wistfully. She mentioned that observing such scenes brought back memories. She recounted a time when she once hosted a small party for her childhood friend's 10th birthday. A friend she had lost much later, both of them orphans once. Her only wish had been to give her friend even a tiny reason to smile amid hardships. Ark's brow knitted in thought at the phrase childhood friend. He repeated the words quietly, confusion evident on his face. Nigh misunderstanding prompted him to wonder if Ark and Eleanor resembled childhood friends in some way. Ark was stunned. He carefully processed the new information, trying to grasp what it implied. Eleanor's childhood friend. He questioned his own knowledge, uncertain if someone fitting that description truly existed within the Celestia Kingdom. The suspicion gnawed at him, making him feel uneasy. He tried to rationalize these thoughts, considering his own irregular existence might be an anomaly, and thus such strange details could be expected. His introspection was cut short when Nye was called away. Left alone, Ark slapped his cheeks to snap out of his daze, determined to finish his work. Suddenly, he realized he had dozed off. He had promised to visit Eleanor once he completed the cleanup. Briskly, he rushed through the corridors and reached her door, out of breath. Silently, he hesitated, thinking she was probably asleep. He debated whether to apologize later, but as he turned, the door suddenly creaked open. He glanced inside, murmuring a quick apology. Without warning, the world tilted violently. A crushing force struck him, flinging him backward. He crashed onto the floor, his eyes widening in terror. A click echoed, followed by a chilling hiss that resembled a reptile's sound. Darkness rapidly filled the room. Thick, ink-like tendrils spilled across the floor, curling and writhing. Panicked, Ark called out Eleanor's name, voice trembling. Heavy, labored breathing echoed in the blackness around him. He struggled to stand, but his limbs refused to obey. Before him, a pair of pale feet stepped onto the floorboards, contrasting sharply with the unnatural darkness swirling around. Sweating profusely, he lifted his head. A figure emerged from the gloom, her outline faint, yet unmistakable. It was Eleanor, but her voice sounded wrong. She stood in a nightgown, shadows curling around her like living things. Ark whispered her name in disbelief, frozen on the floor as he stared at her in horror, at the epicenter of an inexplicable, dark phenomenon. Jagged tendrils of obsidian energy erupted from the ground, swirling dangerously around Eleanor's fragile form. She stood motionless, trapped within the eye of a chaotic storm, her face etched with terror. Suddenly, Ark stepped forward. He called her again. Eleanor flinched, the dark energy pulsating ominously. Yet, instead of fleeing, Ark Degree surprised her. He lifted a plate of cookies he had been carrying, shifting from shock to an air of casual servitude. He announced that he had baked an extra batch of special sweets just for her. The surreal scene, a contrast of sinister shadows and mundane baked goods, created a bizarre but strangely touching moment. He gently chided her for her delay, his tone calm despite the chaos around them. Elelaner looked at him in confusion, unable to comprehend what she was witnessing. Ark's continued gestures implied that, having caught her in such an intimate moment, he regarded himself as her partner in mischief. He extended a cookie, leaning closer to prompt her to open her mouth, disregarding the ominous energy swirling around them. Overcoming her instinct to be afraid, Eleanor hesitantly parted her lips, and the dark force around her began to fade. She took a bite, a simple act that helped ground her amidst the chaos. She pointed out that it was still her birthday, making her indulgence seem justified. The atmosphere shifted from tense to questioning, as Eleanor inquired about the nature of that magic. Arx feigned ignorance, but she pressed further, explaining that it was Celestia, a rare, personal magic granted to each person in their world. Arx listened intently, his mind racing with awareness. He understood precisely what it was and the notorious dark reputation it carried. This revelation struck him deeply, as he recalled that in the lore of their game, Eleanor's mother was essentially a non-existent presence. Yet in reality, things were far darker. Eleanor believed her mother never intended to see her again, her gaze dull and resigned to solitude. This was her past, a history of rejection starting with the one person destined to love her most. Clenching his fist in frustration, Arx realized he couldn't change the past, but he refused to accept her conclusion. He reached out, grasping her hands with a firm, warm grip, and looked into her eyes with unwavering determination. He declared that he wanted to accept her exactly as she was, emphasizing that her fate was not to be hated. He promised he would prevent her from succumbing to darkness. Holding her hand tighter, he vowed to sustain his support indefinitely. Eleanor gazed at him, tears brimming in her eyes. For a moment, Arx faltered, feeling suddenly self-conscious. But then she chuckled, a genuine, heartfelt sound that cut through the melancholy. She confided that she had secretly been hoping he would say just that. Arx reaffirmed his promise, resolute and willing to repeat it as many times as necessary. He committed himself to her as a friend, protector, and childhood companion, determined to shield her from harm. As the emotional moment eased, his thoughts shifted toward strategy. Eleanor's descent into darkness wasn't inherently evil. It stemmed from childhood discrimination. By breaking her isolation, he'd altered the equation. Yet a cold dread crept into his mind as he tried to recall the exact lore behind her fall. A memory surfaced, an image of her final boss profile in the game. The description painted her as calm and sensitive, having suffered a tragic loss of a close friend at the hands of a young, villainous noble. That loss was the catalyst for her transformation. The realization struck him like a thunderbolt. Eleanor sensed his change in demeanor and whispered that if he ever left her side, she might crumble entirely. Her words confirmed the prophecy. The close friend, the catalyst for the apocalypse as described in the lore, was none other than him. He gazed at Eleanor, a bright confidence illuminating his face. Behind her, dark shadows echoed her newfound joy. The game's rules foretold that his death would eradicate her humanity. If their paths remained unchanged, he would arrive in the game's timeline in just 5 years. Before reaching his 15th year, he was destined to perish. His death, in turn, would plunge Eleanor into darkness, transforming her into the ultimate adversary. It was a tragic cycle looping endlessly. By becoming her supporter, he had cemented his role as the hinge upon which her collapse depended. Removing himself would shatter her entirely. Under the bright light of day, Arx stood on the training field, gripping a simple wooden sword. Dirt and minor cuts marked his body, and his breath was ragged. His sparring partner looked worried yet suggested they pause. Arx ignored the concern, insisting on one more round. He straightened, pushing through his fatigue, knowing he had only a few years, perhaps less, to change his fate. Rest was a luxury he couldn't afford. With determined swings, he drove his battered form beyond its physical limits, driven by the desire to become the strongest. He aimed to defy the grim destiny that awaited him, a destiny that spelled his death. The sound of wood meeting would echoed loudly, a defiant roar against the ominous prognosis. Under the relentless sun, their training resumed with relentless rhythm. The instructor called for a break, but Arx insisted he was fine, though his heavy breathing betrayed exhaustion. Without warning, something shifted. The instructor hesitated, sensing an impending threat. Behind Arx, a shadow loomed, firm, watchful, almost predatory. It was Eleanor, observing the practice with a protective intensity. Recognizing the danger, the instructor quickly announced a pause and withdrew. Arx turned, facing Eleanor's commanding yet hesitant presence. She admitted she hadn't intended to interfere. Arx gently scolded her, saying she could have spoken instead of lurking in silence. He asked about her lessons, and she leaned in playfully, hinting they were already over and teasingly suggesting she deserved a reward. Arx reached out, placing his hand softly on her head. As his touch calmed her fierce aura, a warm, radiant smile spread across her face. He continued to pet her, but a darker thought clouded his mind, a reflection on his relentless effort to stop her from falling deeper into darkness. He remembered how her descent was triggered by the loss of her childhood friend. A wave of hopelessness washed over him, that despite all his efforts, he hadn't changed a thing. The prophesied tragedy loomed over him, an unyielding shadow. He briefly considered pushing her away, but her vulnerability in that moment made him realize resistance was futile. Eleanor interrupted his thoughts, asking for more affection. He obliged, unable to sever their bond. Yet, in doing so, he sensed her noticing his strange mood and pulling back, worried. Arx flinched at her concern. As he searched for an explanation, his sparring partner stepped forward, claiming Arx was simply fired up for the upcoming ritual. The guard winked mischievously, hinting he was just showing off. Eleanor's eyes lit up with excitement. Recognition dawned on Arx. He remembered the ritual of trials, a ceremony where 10-year-olds ventured into a dungeon to prove their strength. The words haunted him, awakening fears of what such a challenge truly entailed. In the lore of the game, it was arguably the most dangerous place for him to face death. He quickly spat out an excuse and hurried away, seeking refuge in the solitude of a corridor. Leaning against the wall, he slid down into a state of despair, overwhelmed by remorse for his neglect. The ritual of trials represented a pivotal moment. Despite the supposed safety, he knew that if fate was to strike, it would likely happen here. Gazing at his trembling hand, he wondered what actions he could take to avoid catastrophe. Defiance burned within him. He refused to accept his demise without a fight. Time blurred as anxiety and a sense of urgency overtook him. On the eve of the trial, Arx reflected on the threats ahead, poisonous creatures that he had to watch out for. The uncertainty gnawed at his mind, fueling fears that he might indeed face death the next day. He pondered the original Arx from the game's storyline, curious about how he would die and what kind of tragedy would push Eleanor into darkness. The mechanism of his fate seemed impossible to defend against when he didn't even know what it was. When the day of the ritual dawned, Arx and Eleanor stood at the edge of a dense forest, ready for the challenge. Towering trees cast long shadows over the sobering scene. Eleanor's trembling betrayed her fear, while Arx tightened his grip on his scabbard, steadying himself. Calmly, he confirmed their goal, to reach the heart of the forest. They ventured deeper amid thickening canopy and whispering leaves. Eleanor hesitated, voice trembling, asking if he was frightened. Arx led ahead, assuring her he would protect her, a promise he meant to keep. Inside, his mind was a turbulent storm of fear. Ever since he grasped the certainty of death, terror had taken root within him. Yet, he subdued that fear, burying it beneath his unwavering resolve. Speaking again, he assured her he was more afraid of her getting hurt than of any danger they faced. That truth surpassed his dread of death, giving him strength. Eleanor, observing his back, found solace in his steadfast stance. She gathered her courage and declared she was prepared too. Clenching his fist, Arx reminded himself that he'd trained, prepared, and sworn to protect her. Now all that remained was for him to believe in his own strength. With a final command, he stepped boldly into the unknown. The pair vanished into the shadows of the trial, heading toward a destiny they were determined to rewrite, despite the narrative threatening to consume them. Deep within the ancient woodlands stood the sacred stone, a massive monolith marking the core objective of today's challenge. The task was deceptively simple: claim a fragment of the stone solely through one's own effort, without outside aid. As they moved through the thick undergrowth, Arx detected movement in the bushes. Slightly annoyed by how obvious the hidden guard's presence was, he understood why they were there. Powerful monsters seldom appeared in this area, and a team of over 10 guards stood ready to protect the noble children from danger. Eleanor sensed his distraction and called out, prompting him to stay alert. She inquired whether he had sensed any presence nearby, but Ark dismissed her concern as merely his imagination. Yet, Elon confided that she had also felt eyes watching them for quite some time. Her intuition surprised Ark, a quiet flicker crossing his face as he hadn't expected such perceptiveness from her. With a gentle smile, he reassured her that everything would be fine and clasped his sword firmly. He vowed to protect her if danger arose. Eleanor clung to him anxiously, placing unwavering trust in his strength and affirming that she relied on him completely. Watching them, the guards hidden in the bushes silently appreciated Ark's support, though they silently wished they could remain unnoticed. They pressed onward until a sudden rustling shattered the silence, and both sharply turned toward the sound. Ark tensed immediately, sensing that whatever was approaching felt unlike the guards or any typical threat. Something about this presence struck him as unusual. Briefly, he recalled the monstrous foe destined to end his life one day. But what emerged from the foliage was entirely different. A small, fluffy creature with a single horn appeared and emitted a gentle cry. Both Ark and Eleanor stared, caught off guard. Ark quickly identified it as an elmage, confirming its species. Eleanor asked if Ark intended to attack it, prompting him to warn her against judging by appearances. Though adorable, these beings could be ferocious predators. As if in response, the elmarage suddenly lunged forward with astonishing speed, horn aimed directly at them. Eleanor screamed as the creature charged. Ark reacted instantly, stepping in front of her and swinging his sword in a single fluid motion. The blade intercepted the creature's attack mid-charge, halting it before it could reach her. Concerned, Eleanor asked if it was over, her voice trembling. Ark lowered his sword cautiously and began sheathing it. The elmarage collapsed onto its back, lying motionless. Yet Eleanor immediately noticed something odd. There was no blood. She wondered why. Ark explained that he had used a technique that inflicted internal cuts, leaving no external wound. Her fingers reached out to touch the small body, which seemed peaceful, almost as if it were sleeping. She quietly observed that moments earlier, it had been bouncing happily. She looked down at her trembling hands, visibly shaken. Ark noticed her distress and softly asked if she was in shock. She admitted that it was unsettling but understood that such sacrifices were part of this world. He silently watched her, recognizing how much she had grown. Eleanor's voice was muted as she whispered that, even so, it was heartbreaking when something so cute was lost. Ark nodded with a gentle smile, agreeing that her feelings were valid. She looked at her hands, her expression sad and conflicted, and muttered almost to herself that, if it were possible, she would confine such creatures somewhere safe forever, rather than see them die. Her face reflected deep sorrow and moral struggle, disturbed by the idea of ending an innocent life. Ark listened silently, understanding the gravity of her feelings, fully aware that the trials they faced were designed to teach this very lesson. Survival sometimes demanded difficult, morally complex choices. Suddenly, Elon's face lit up with a cheerful smile as she declared it was time to move on. She acted as if the previous tension had vanished, radiating happiness. Ark sensed something was off, yet he questioned whether he was merely imagining it. They resumed their walk through the forest until Ark halted, recognizing that they had reached their destination. Before them rose an ancient, colossal sacred stone, its presence majestic and timeless. Ark told Elon that they ought to begin scraping a fragment from the monument immediately to fulfill their mission. Working in tandem, they carefully collected shards from the stone and secured them inside a vial. With a sense of achievement, Ark announced their task was completed. Elon suggested they rest briefly, exhausted from their effort, and Ark agreed without hesitation. Suddenly, a distant scream pierced the silence, causing him to tense. From the trees, 3 boys appeared, noticing Ark and Elon on the path. One of them explained they had fallen behind because they had lost their way. They assumed Ark and Elon were merely fellow exam participants like themselves. Then one boy stopped, eyes narrowing as he recognized Arkansas. His face twisted with resentment. He knew Arkansas. Ark was the young man his mother and other adults admired, the one portrayed as an example, which had earned him reproach. Ark remembered the incident vividly. A reprimand directed at a child told to emulate his example. That very boy was likely the culprit. The boys confirmed Ark's identity and then shifted their focus to Elon. Recognizing her as well, they referred to her dismissively as Crow Girl, displaying clear contempt for both. They whispered among themselves, stunned to realize that the Crow Girl their mother spoke of was actually a noble. Ark scoffed inwardly at their narrow-mindedness and silently demanded they cease. The boys recoiled under his intense glare but panicked, exaggerating the rumors, calling her a monster crow that would devour them, and then fled in terror. Ark watched them retreat, annoyed by how foolish gossip spread lies. He moved to pursue, but Elon grasped his sleeve, silently signaling him to stop. She spoke calmly, asking him to please refrain from escalating the situation. Ark looked taken aback, trying to object, but Elon gently questioned whether those words truly bothered her. She implied that such rumors had no real power over her. He blinked in surprise as she explained she was accustomed to this kind of treatment, and there was no need for concern. Recognizing her resilience, Ark admitted he might have been too overprotective, especially considering that his eventual death could push her toward darkness. Elon turned slightly away, and he reflected on how much stronger she had become. He felt a wave of relief mixed with a subtle, unnameable conflict. She leaned close and softly said that as long as he acknowledged her, that was all that mattered. Her sincere, gentle smile conveyed her words carried genuine meaning. Her support was worth more than anything the rumors could offer. Feeling somewhat overwhelmed, Ark thought privately that Elon truly had grown stronger. While relief washed over him, he also sensed an underlying tension he couldn't quite understand. Nearby, a guard remarked that with Ark present, their reliance on others might become unnecessary. One of the guards privately noted that, although Ark appeared physically strong, there was something uncertain about him that he couldn't quite place. He recalled how Ark had begged him earnestly to respond immediately if anything unusual occurred, eyes filled with genuine concern as he pleaded, "Please." The guard reflected that Ark seemed so desperate in that moment that ignoring him was simply impossible. Meanwhile, another guard shrugged dismissively, feeling unimpressed since no actual incident had taken place. One of them investigated a footprint left in the dirt, a furrow appearing between his brows as he admitted he didn't recognize it. He wondered if it might belong to local children from the nearby village. Still, the cautious one decided to check on the scouting party ahead, just to be safe. His companion responded with confusion, surprised by his seriousness. "Probably nothing," he said with a teasing tone, dismissing the guard's caution. The pair continued down the path, relaxed and completely unaware of the lurking shadows. Behind them, dark shapes crept silently from the bushes, cloaked in shadow. A subtle darkness gathered around someone's feet, signaling that a far more threatening presence was approaching, something far deadlier than anyone could have anticipated.